I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com. And joining me in the studio, still waiting for his turn at the post-invasion town council meeting, it's Andy Greenwald!
Hey everyone, more of a comment than a question.
Hey Maria, I know we've got a lot of things going on, but I would love it if people could remember to use the correct recycling method.
I thought we were composting now. We were going to talk about
What
Last
are we
of Us.
composting though?
Great call. Great call.
And are we sure composting didn't lead to this whole thing in the first place?
That's what I've been saying.
Have you?
To myself.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, what's up? It's Monday.
Hey.
We're here. We're Andy and Chris, two TV talking guys,
What's
and we're gonna hit Last of Us today.
Mm.
A little bit of this dude at the studio, friends and neighbors, two Apple TV projects that we're very excited about. Greenwald, how you doing?
I'm great, but I want to turn I know you hate it. I want to swing the camera back to you.
Do you think I hate it?
You shy away from the limelight sometimes. You, Chris,
Yeah.
and Sean, who is currently sending us a lot of friendly texts about Saquon Barkley.
Meeting with Donald Trump.
Yeah. So,
He golfed with him.
I mean, it's just golf.
Sometimes you get paired with a guy. You know? Let me tell you something. I think I've golfed with a lot worse guys.
You know what I miss?
I've golfed with a lot of his fans as well, you know?
Do you know what I miss? One of the great things, and I feel like our listeners will appreciate this, one of the great things about being friends with you over the years has been, sometimes you go out in the front lines of parts of the world and society that I don't go or I am not welcome.
What does that mean?
No, one of my favorite genres of stories from you, well, like the Deaf Haven concert the other week.
You would have been welcome there.
Oh, no, okay, but I didn't want to go. But thank you for the invitation.
Okay.
My point is, a couple years ago, you would a bunch of years ago, you would sometimes go to the gym and play pickup basketball, and you would come back with these stories of just getting threes rained down upon you by suburban guys with hair transplant scars, and it was awesome. And
that was a long time ago.
Now I feel like I'm missing out on the contemporary equivalent, which is your golf pairings with MAGA guys.
I mean,
it happens.
You don't get to fill out a survey before you sign up for your tea time.
So what do you just you line them up and you're like, so tariffs, huh? Is that what you do?
No, it comes out naturally over the course of a round where just one guy brings up a hot topic. And one thing I will say is nobody seems to be able to stay off of it, you know?
What topics? Hot topics?
Yeah, because I think there used to be probably topics that you could be like, let's just talk about this Wolves-Lakers series, and somehow politics would still get brought into it.
Yeah, you say that, but every time you were at a bar in the early 2000s, you would just talk about campus life and academic freedoms and be like, here he goes again. Ahead of his time. Anyway, all of this was intended to say you and Sean got to go in the Criterion closet this weekend. I'm so jealous, and I want to
mobile Criterion closet.
And that hasn't dropped yet.
No, it was on Instagram, so you're not revealing anything. But on Sunday, Sean was doing kind of some video stuff, and also saying hi to folks who were waiting online for hours outside of Vidiots to go to the Criterion mobile closet. You could go in and pick up a few things and take pictures and stuff like that. But it was really
that's so cool.
A gathering of the juggalos when it came to letterboxed heads. It was pretty awesome, you know?
Did you have a plan? You must have thought about this.
Well, here's the thing is I wasn't sure if we were going in. I thought we were just hanging out. And second of all, I didn't realize that it was organized by catalog number. So you don't walk in and you're like, of course, I'm under the influence right here. You know, you're kind of and looking around and scanning and scanning and scanning.
They don't tell you that.
No, I mean, I think people know if they know.
Sean also knows the catalog numbers by heart.
But we helped each other a little bit by being what's one thing that is not super popular that you want to get? And I grabbed Pale Flower. I mean, you'll see. But
great movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
That's so cool.
Big influence on Tokyo Vice.
Really?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite movies, and yet I never actually watched that show. Sorry.
And you wonder why you weren't invited into the closet.
I wasn't invited golfing. I do wonder, and this is not a conversation for today necessarily, but there are certain things where it's when I was a kid, for example, There were a lot of like Nickelodeon game shows where they were basically all supermarket sweeps, but sometimes they were like in toy stores. And I spent hours being like, okay, if I ever get this opportunity, what's my strategy?
Oh, yeah.
Never
Have you thought about that for the Criterion?
That's what I'm saying. I feel like there are things now in modern life where one has to have a strategy, even if one is likely never to be asked. One would be Criterion Closet. One would maybe be Subway Takes. Have you seen these videos?
I've seen those, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you give takes away for a living. So.
Well, yeah, I think I also got off my best takes on the hottest take.
Don't think you could recycle them?
I wouldn't. I would never.
Look at you're a professional. God, I love it.
Something of a Ronin when it comes to my opinions.
I didn't want to revisit that too soon, but I have gotten a lot of positive feedback from the Japanese language admiring society of English speakers.
What about Japanese language speaking society?
They've been quiet.
Yeah.
They've been quiet, but I don't know.
Much like Ronin. They keep it to themselves.
It's true. It's true. All right. Well, back to business.
Okay. Why don't we jump on?
I haven't seen Sinners yet. Sorry. I will see it soon. I just feel like I should tell people because that's what you want to talk about.
No, I've talked about Sinners on podcasts. I wanted you to have it for your, recommended cultural breakfast.
Oh,
thanks. Like you need it so that you can competently comment on like cinema to come, and the box office and the state of Hollywood.
I'm thrilled by its box office resilience.
Yeah.
I do love a resilient box office story.
A second weekend to behold.
It is. I mean, that is super nerdy, but actually pretty impressive.
I want to talk to you about The Last of Us.
So do I.
Okay. So obviously last week, this huge momentous episode, and obviously we were spoiling Last of Us previous and present if you haven't caught up on it. This is the first episode with a post-Joel show, a post-Pedro Pascal show, and also for the fictional world of the show, a post-Joel landscape. It's essentially, Anthony Edwards has sat down, and now Nikhil Alexander Walker, or whoever you want to compare Ellie to, has got to take the ball.
You have to understand here. I thought you were talking about ER. I thought you were talking about the actor.
Yeah.
And I was like, he did leave the show after 11 seasons, and I guess Noah Wiley stepped up. Or I was like, is he going for Goose and Top Gun?
And my Wolves metaphor was strained. I think that
I have a more strained NBA metaphor coming up.
Okay,
for the
good.
Show, so go on.
Let's do general thoughts. I think we can get into like some nitty gritty plot stuff here, and I have a couple of fun questions about therapy and city government. But
yeah,
tell me what you thought of the episode, and tell me where you kind of see the show right now, because it was a huge turning point.
I want to make sure we have enough space to wander, almost as if we're wandering from Wyoming to Washington State, to talk about this both in terms of like the experience of watching this show and judging this episode of the show, and then the larger conversation about attempting something like this in midstream and what it means just in terms of the construction and scaffolding of the show. The former, I think that argument is probably going to be a little more nuanced and positive than my reaction to the former question, because I thought, broadly speaking, this was the weakest episode of the series to date. Mainly because it's not just that it lacked action. I'm not just I'm not just a juice head. Like, that's not what I need out of the show. But it really was just like a massive reaction, retrenchment, and then almost hyper speed. Okay, but now this is where we're going. So again, I think that there's arguments to be made for why it's constructed that way and the benefits of just ping-ponging into something new before the episode ended. But in terms of the lived experience of watching it, I thought it was pretty rough.
Do you think you were reacting maybe to what I felt like was like a significant departure from the visual language of the previous episode, which makes sense? Mark Mylod brought in and doing his...
Yeah.
Kind of a little bit more verite, a little bit more jittery, obviously, of huge set pieces in that episode. But I found this almost disarmingly or disorientingly flat and bright and static.
Yeah, I mean, directed by Peter Hoare, whose work we've loved. He directed It's a Sin, the AIDS crisis British show that we raved about a couple years ago. I thought that some of the landscape photography of this episode was really beautiful and honestly kept it afloat for me.
Travelogue stuff was cool.
But I think you're right to point out that last week's episode was compelling on a number of levels. It got a lot of attention for the shock and the plot, but this visual storytelling was absolutely elite. And it suited that episode. So it's going to be jarring on a number of levels. I think we can get into the weeds with it, but I feel like we have to sort of address the bigger thing, which is, and here's my strained NBA metaphor. This episode was a little bit like the 24-25 Sixers in that the big man went down early, and maybe the kids weren't where we thought they were.
Now, when you say big man, are you referring to the
all three
middle
players?
middle linebacker zombie who got incinerated?
Oh, that big man?
Yeah.
No, I think we got him at the end of the first round, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that the Joel absence is really significant. The show is built around, and of course it is. I mean, that's nobody's denying that the show is presented as a two-hander, and now we just got the one hand now. I think that it is a very, very challenging absence to work around. The main reason why is, before we even talk about Bella Ramsey, I want to talk about Ellie as a character. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you've spent more time rewatching the first season, but in my experience watching the show, the Ellie character has been almost entirely reactive. Maybe the exception is the mall episode, where we learned, it's more of an origin story of her trauma and things like that. But she is often most of the things that she's done is she's the package. She's being transported. She's the special one. She's everything. She's the potential. She's the avatar. She's the Christ. She's the Messiah. Yeah. She's really pissed off at all of these things that keep happening to her. And I think we touched on this last week. There might be a really interesting character arc as the reactor becomes the actor, as the person who had the privilege of being annoyed by everything and put out by things has to take on more of the responsibility and burden. But I feel like the show hadn't coached her up to that level as a character to hang it on her shoulders. And I also felt like, again, late season Sixers, where they were just running out 10-day contract guys, being like, maybe someone here will spark. The show, because of the pre-existing video game and the narrative direction that it has to go in. And by the way, I have no doubt that like the action will come fast and furious next week, and there'll be a whole different set of circumstances to talk about. But like, settled in pretty early at the backcourt of Ellie and Dina. And I was like, maybe we need some more.
Well, it's interesting you should bring that up.
Maybe we need some more people taking shots here.
I don't know if that is how the game did it. There's definitely been some re-engineering of what Tommy is present for versus what Dina is present for.
Yes, I did some reading. Tommy was present for the golf game in the video game.
He was in the gallery. Yeah.
Is that a golf term?
Yep.
Thank you.
That's an interesting point that you make. I didn't necessarily feel, if anything, I felt like this episode was the first version of and obviously so, the first episode of Last of Us 2.0, which is not Last of Us 2, the video game, but a new version of this show. And what we're kind of seeing is this accelerated version of something, say, Lost did very well, which is all of a sudden you blink and it's a different show with a different cast. Now, there may be some remnants of the first version of it, and there are some ideas that are consistent throughout. But in the same way that, you had Jeremy Davies and Elizabeth Mitchell
There's the tailies, then there's the whole other,
You now are getting introduced to the sort of, Krishna guys who are like walking, Hammer Krishnas.
Do we know anything about them?
I do, but not only with it. This is where I want to kind of go with this conversation. There's the people who are walking the path out in Washington and are attacked. There's all these allusions to, and finally a glimpse of the Washington Liberation Front. There's a little bit of an expansion of the world beyond separate, like little side episodes, whether it's the Melanie Linsky episode, Kansas City, or the Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett episode from earlier in the season, and any of the snapshots that we would get here and there. So I thought it was really interesting in terms of opening the aperture, obviously moving the action to the Pacific Northwest away from Wyoming. I've thought it was very compelling that as Ellie and Dina are on their mission or on the road, we're not also cutting back to Jackson to be like, and how does the great work go on there?
We've moved on.
Yeah.
I mean, the show...
But for the first two episodes, we meet Jesse, we're getting a glimpse at like how things work in
Gale's
Jackson.
drinking is proceeding apace.
Yeah.
I appreciate the show maybe more than anything about the show, and I'm sure there are versions of this that we said in the first season. I do appreciate its lack of sentimentality about how much time we have to spend places and where the more interesting parts of the story may lie. I think that's ultimately a really, really successful thing.
I mean, I saw a funny interview with Pascal. I mean, it was, I think, part of the HBO materials, but he essentially admitted to taking this role because he knew it was finite.
Oh, I'm sure.
But that's a different relationship to a storytelling.
Was he talking about Mandalorian role or this?
Well, he doesn't have to do anything.
He's a king for his career choices.
He's like voice notes.
For real, though.
Like, where's the baby Yoda?
Who pays?
Send.
Who spends more time on a project? Pedro Pascal in The Mandalorian or Tony Dalton the time he was on our podcast from a balcony somewhere?
It was
on
COVID.
his iPhone.
Come on, yeah.
Still
but he was
incredible.
kind of like, I wasn't being flip, but he was just like, yeah, when they told me how long I would have to be on the show, I took the role because I obviously have 9 other films coming out, but I don't think you're going to see someone like Pedro Pascal sign up for possibly 8 years of a show.
Correct.
So
that's a tell these days.
Yeah. In any case, I thought it was, I thought, like I said, I thought it was fascinating that we basically turned the entire focus of the show to a different area and to a different story.
Let me ask you something about that idea. I'm going to say this carefully because I don't know how I feel about this, but it's something that I'm just trying to suss out and articulate. You mentioned Lost, and Lost could swap casts in and out. It could change locations. It could do flashbacks. It could do flash forwards, flash sideways, introduce statues and all kinds of smoke monsters, all kinds of crazy things. But the central conceit of the show, guys, where are we? Stayed throughout. The Walking Dead, to which the show is compared favorably or not favorably, but you kind of have to bring it into the conversation, did something at the time which felt pretty radical, but then in retrospect actually was just a smart way to have a show run for many, many years with a lot of spinoffs, which is after the first, I think it's like in the first bunch of mini episodes of Walking Dead, they're trekking to the CDC, and they're not trekking far, right? Because the show starts in Atlanta, I believe.
Yeah.
And they get there, and Noah Emmerich is there, and there's
Isn't the CDC in Atlanta? It starts...
CDC is, yeah. Yes, the CDC is in Atlanta.
Oh, no, are they going to DC?
Oh, maybe. I don't remember where. Regardless, they're going to find out what happened.
Somewhere in the ACC or the SEC. It is not that much of a conference.
And with the transfer portal these days, really, is anyone anywhere? My point being, the first few episodes went right at a traditional movie framework, which is this crazy thing happened, and we got to find out what it is, and maybe we can reverse it. That episode establishes pretty definitively that we're not going to figure this out. This is done now.
Yes.
And so the show is going to be about struggling to make a new civilization or just struggling to survive. The first season of Last of Us, based on a video game, and video games also have to have a final boss or forward momentum or goal, was this girl is the cure, and we get her to the place and we fix the world. And then I imagine the game ends like the first season, and it's in a pretty dramatic, surprising turn of events. One person is worth more than the potential savior of whatever, and there's this burden now, and sets up the sequel. Since that happened, at least in the world of the show, I'm game agnostic. The idea of Ellie's abilities or the power of her blood or her immunity is quiet and secret, and the purpose of the show went from she could save everyone to we need to make a new life here to now we need to get revenge for the guy.
Right.
The overstory of the show has changed pretty radically now. And I feel, I think, a little lost within that.
Okay, so let's get to the conversation that I actually wanted to have. So,
okay, but do you have a feeling about that, or is this connected?
It's connected.
Okay.
I've been thinking, obviously, a lot about this show in comparison to Andor, just because they were both airing at the same time, and they are two versions of doing world building. Andor, I would compare more to like the Russian novel style, where you have currently, I think, 20 meaningful characters operating in almost as many different planets, if not places. There is 12 hours or however many hours of information that you kind of have to be fluent with to remember, oh, this shipping lane, she did that before. He's doing this now. This is bad for Bix because X, Y, and Z have happened. Brasso was doing this. You know, all this stuff that you're kind of always scanning, reading, processing. Ultimately, I think what happens is when you make a show in the style of Andor, or say like The Wire, and David Simon shows particularly do this, although I would say We Own the City is different, where all the pieces matter, to use the Simonism. And also, I think the more important thing than the emotional component is the overall statement it's making about how life works,
right,
and what life is, and what our time on the world is like. I think Craig Mazin's project is far more interested in the emotional impact of events on characters and how those emotions motivate different actions.
Right.
Whereas I think Tony is almost looking at things as like there is institutional pressure, institutional apparatuses that are pushing down on these people until they explode up. It's two different ways of telling a story, but what Craig Mazin is doing, for instance, is we get a shot of these people walking on a path, you know, shaved heads, they look kind of cultish. Scarification, talking about a prophet, but he's like hiding it a little bit. It's like we don't know who these people are. We don't know why they're being hunted by wolves.
We don't know what side we're on.
And I think that there's an effort to obscure and, you know, kind of use suspense to kick it down the line a little bit and be like, oh, and we're going to find out who that prophet was, probably in a flashback episode, or we still don't know who's this big bad person out in Seattle who's running the Washington Liberation Front, all this stuff. It's just two different ways of telling a story, but ultimately, like, I was trying to get my mind around, like, why is this Gail therapist character keep showing up when she doesn't seem like a very good therapist? And now that we've left Jackson, I don't know if we're really going to learn much about this Eugene situation.
Yeah.
Her husband, who is Joel, killed. And I think the reason for it is that he wants people talking about their feelings. He wants the emotional content of the show to be way more front and center than the how this world works part.
I think that's very well observed. It's very generously observed. And I agree with you. And I think that, look, if you have Chernobyl on your resume, you're good.
Yeah.
And you have proven your commitment not only to making something that is artistic, but something that is thoughtful, respectful, and deeply felt, relating to tragedy, to world events, to how humans are inevitably the authors of our own downfall. And I think that when the show is at its best, he is able to find a rare marriage between the necessities of contemporary television / video game plotting and extremity and the more internal types of stories that he wants to tell. I think it's significant that when people think about the first season of Last of Us, they talk about the Nick Offerman episode. Maybe I'm in the wrong
group chats.
Yeah. Maybe people are like, that mushroom zombie attack was sick. But I think that broadly speaking, what was most memorable and what felt most unique about that first season wasn't even just that episode. It was the structural audacity of putting that episode there as a marker of the type of show that it wanted to be, that it could be, that it would try to maybe experiment in getting closer to being on a more consistent basis. So I think your point is very well observed, but in this case, I think the institutional pressures that crush David Simon characters are operating on Craig Mazin's Better Angels, because I think that this is, look, and I say this as someone who literally lives inside a wooden horse every hour that he's not on this podcast, but this is the Trojan. This is a Trojan horse. We all are in a Trojan horse. Get it? Type of industry right now. People know what I've used that analogy 100 times, but that, like, he's trying to sneak in a character-based, emotionally resonant drama about trauma within a zombie video game adaptation.
Yeah.
Now, I know if there are gamer fans listening, the game, by all accounts, is much, much, much more intelligent and thoughtful than other games might be, and it's painting with too broad a brush to say, oh, it's just a kid's thing. I get all that. But this episode in particular should have been the one to really land that plane. I think it's interesting that it wasn't. That actually, for me, watching this episode, I felt the gears grinding more than I had in previous episodes, because we had to start them here, paying some service to what just happened. So we see Ellie screaming in death, and then 3 months later, and then now we're in a different place, and now she's willing to eat a cookie, and we're gardening, and we're having council meetings again, and then we're off to the races, and we're suddenly gallivanting across major swaths of the country in a 8-minute, beautiful, truly beautiful landscape montage. That felt video gamey to me in an episode that really had the opportunity to be about regret and trauma and emotional reaction and all those things. Now, you could also say, and maybe we'll be able to say in the scheme of, in the fullness of time at the end of the season, that I don't think Ellie was really processing the trauma.
Well, she's hiding it.
And raced off, and the eye for an eye Hammurabi vibes that are permeating some members of the council, including our guy Seth. Who, for a minute, I was like,
homophobe Hammurabi is in the building.
Do you think Hammurabi was very liberal with his social policies?
It was funny because I was like, Robert Burke has to do something, did you don't bring him on? I loved how he got like mad old because of what happened.
Yes. Now he has a walking stick.
Yeah, and I thought he was great, but it was interesting because I was like, I know Seth is gonna have something to say here.
Can I just sidebar? Robert Burke's star of one of my all-time favorite movies, Hal Hartley's Simple Men, and I do get the sense just from the times that it props up on my like social feeds that the Sonic Youth dance sequence from Simple Men that features Seth has outlived perhaps Simple Men itself, and people should check out that movie.
I think so, yeah.
That's an awesome scene. Anyway, I was excited, but maybe even that says something. Like, I kind of was hoping Seth was saddling up too, because I kind of wanted, okay, help me find our show now with like a community, or without the absence of Joel, is it going to have to be a team effort, quite literally?
Yeah.
And look, next week we may, I don't know, Jeffrey Wright might show up, or I didn't watch the next on, but I know that there are a lot of
Jeffrey Wright on the show now?
Yeah, that there are a lot of other great cast members showing up.
Damn.
And
I know. Who else is on the show?
But also the first season established with Melanie Linsky and things like people can come on and do some good work, and not necessarily, they can be there for a good time, not a long time.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've got Deaver Fever, and she's waiting somewhere near the Space Needle. So there might be, I don't want to say I complain, but I was critical of the first episode because I was like, oh, are we just living in Jackson now? And clearly, no, we're not.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to sound like I'm having it both ways, but I thought that this episode kind of was emblematic of an existential struggle of this show, if not my struggle with finding a reason to kind of enjoy it, which is ongoing.
Yeah, I think you're probably criticizing something a little bit more specific. I was merely like kind of drawing this comparison between the two ways of doing large-scale fictional world building.
I went off on a tangent.
No,
let's go back to that.
I don't know which one I prefer. I think I prefer Andor as a show, and it's not one or the other kind of conversation. But I was really interested in the choice, the way that Craig Mazin probably has an answer for every single question, and Neil Druckmann certainly does because it's the world he created and built up. But I find myself very curious about like Fedra stuff, like just like little details of the world,
details,
and that stuff did come up a bit in the Linsky Kansas City run in the first season. So and you can certainly go online and find out all you want to know about it, including like the detailed history of like what cities they took over and then what rebellions happened against them and all this other stuff. But I think in the Tony Gilroy version of this show, there's probably like a Fedra plot.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
There's probably like what drove these people to be this way, as much as just like self-evidently like these people are scarring each other,
Let me say, though, just in defense of Last of Us, one of the great benefits that Tony has in Andor is he is writing to a known endpoint.
Yeah.
Not just the movie, but Star Wars. Like the Death Star that they're building, we know its fate. And that allows him...
Still up there.
You think it's still up there? Oh, wait. Are you a conspiracy theorist?
Yeah.
About Death Stars?
They faked them out.
Do you think TIE fighter fuel doesn't burn steel beams? Is that... Whoa.
What if like the Gosling movie, it's just like somehow the Death Star has returned?
That would not surprise me. That would so deeply not surprise. Somehow Luke Skywalker is young and hot again.
What do you think of the name Star Wars Starfighter as the name of the movie?
I think it sounds like an Andrew WK album title, and I'm pro. It suggests to me that like the galaxy brain thinking, the galaxy far, far away brain thinking maybe has been snuffed out a little bit over there.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what's sick?
Starfighting.
Yeah. Like they should just call another one like Star Wars Lightsaber.
I know.
Like
I would definitely go.
Look how excited you got when I said
man.
that. Maybe they've learned their
There's
lesson.
a moment in The Accountant 2 where Ben Affleck's character is swinging a fake lightsaber around. And I was like, this looks pretty good.
They should make a movie about this.
What if there was a Jedi accountant?
Wait, the Jedis were tax collectors in the first trilogy, so I'm sure there's a Jedi accountant. I'm saying that like all the little filigrees and detail that Tony can do. I mean, first of all, you can't actually compare it to any other experience in TV, both because of who he is and the circumstance and the moment that got greenlit and Kathy Kennedy letting him do everything. It is one of one.
I'm really not trying to be like
no, I know, but I think in defense of Mazin and Druckmann, like they have an ending to their video game. I get the sense that they're pushing past that or they're aiming for something bigger here, but they can't count on that for the large percentage of the audience that's engaging with the show.
I'm also really curious about the idea of
something.
POV in this show. So obviously, for the most part, it was Ellie or Joel's point of view. When we have been in any one place with them, we have expanded. This season has shown us a little bit of Abby and her thought process into what she did, but then cut that supply line off.
Right.
I'm relatively sure that Caitlin Deaver will be back and that we will see more of this character just based on what I know about the video game, but also about like just...
Also, if you were spoiled by the trades as to what her next moves are.
Why? What did it say?
Well, the show is renewed. Let's put it that way.
The Last of Us?
Yes.
Yeah, I guessed. I hate doing the like what I would have done or what I would have liked is if you'd show me this, or this. I was just very struck by the whole scene with the people walking on that path outside of Seattle. And how little we knew about what was happening and what was going on. And we were just getting these little breadcrumbs and how different it is from another style of storytelling that's also on TV. That's why I kind of like brought all this up. I have some other questions I wanted to ask you about this show though.
Yeah, let's go.
Do you think Gail is a bad therapist? A. B, intentionally trying to make the mental health of people of Jackson worse. C, has a grand plan and is just doing tough love or a certain school of therapy that's going to get everybody to the place they need to get.
What about D? Did you also think that the only beer that survived the apocalypse was Grolsch? Because of those very specific bottles?
I think they're home brewing.
I figured.
Yeah. I have some questions about how many guns they have.
I have so many questions about that. But
whether they could afford to lose those to Ellie's magical adventure.
I thought this too, but at the same time, I just think you can't go broke overestimating, but did I get that right? How many guns, alcoholic beverages, and sick Filson and Wrangler fits there are. That
was really funny when she started crying holding the wax jacket.
Oh, God damn, I'd cry over that jacket too. You got to save that. Take little
such
golf
a
club holes out
garment.
of it. Yeah. I think... now I'm thinking about everything you're asking me through the prism of your Craig Mazin's preferences. A show about the only therapist who survives the apocalypse. Sign me up. That's the show for me.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. And I think Catherine O'Hara is, by the way, so good on this and just such a good actor. And we rarely get to see her be straight
She's
drama.
Great. She does. I think she's being put in a character-wise. It's like she's just there so that people say the things that they're feeling,
and to get exposition moving along.
This is why I don't go to therapy. Though.
That's why you do podcasts.
I'm not interested in participating in that kind of plot armor.
Plot armor. Good for you. Does Joel's jacket count as plot armor? Do you think?
That's a good question.
I guess my answer to that is we don't know because as much as they try to dress it up, and this is the thing with the show, right? It's the best possible casting for it. It's the most interesting way into her life and her experience by making her a widow, and Joel killed her husband, and she's an alcoholic, and she has so it's the most interesting version of someone who doesn't actually get to have that much depth because the show doesn't have the real estate to investigate it. We actually don't know what anyone is bringing to her or saying to her, or if the majority of her sessions end with some feeling of release or a hug or an accusation that she's drunk. It's just, she's a liar. Joel is hiding something. Come crack a grolsch with me.
Do you think that the reason why she seems intent on unlocking the secrets of Joel and Ellie are related to what Joel did to Eugene, or do you think she's just an ump and she's calling balls and strikes?
No, I mean, I think that the project of the show suggests that like everyone has their own relatively petty motivation, not petty, but like human motivations for doing everything that they do, even altruistic concerns. I mean, the lingering question about the show for me, maybe this is on your list, is like, okay, so now who, I guess Ellie's not going to find out what Joel did until Abby tells her, basically. Like, so that then
Ellie
it complicates.
Is deep down aware of what Joel did.
It's something, yeah.
Yeah, I think that she was in and out of consciousness during that experience. Obviously, she was sedated.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, when she was being taken out of Salt Lake City. She asks Joel straight up to his face, like, what happened? But I think that there's a suggestion that there's something uneasy about that, and that's why she was maybe not on the best terms with Joel as he died, and also like she seems to have a sneaking suspicion that there's more to like the story. What does it say about me?
Can't wait.
That when Dina greets Ellie with the cookies and is like, here's
gonna be
the
mad.
Logo of the guys who got Joel. I was like, that's a cool logo.
I've been waiting this whole podcast to ask if you had any Washington Liberation Front 7 inches.
I've been waiting to find my team in this show.
Yeah, here we go. This is why I keep showing up.
Looking, fun group of people walking through the streets of Seattle, a city I love.
First of all, this is reminiscent of your flirtation with the city of Portland, where you're like, maybe I should live there. Like, you are always coming home.
Yeah. To myself.
To yourself in the Pacific Northwest. There's no question. My takeaway from that scene with Dina was, my God, I don't remember what we talked about on this podcast 10 minutes ago. She, 3 months later, has complete recall of everyone's name.
Yeah, she should be a court illustrator. Like, she did a great job.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, real talk. Like, at our ages, when people introduce themselves to you, what's the percentage you catch the name?
Well, I also am going deaf. So a lot of the times it's like, that was either Caitlin or Charles. Like, I have no idea. Like, it's just like, it kind of goes in and I'm like, I think I got that. But you a lot of that is Deaf Heaven's fault, you know?
Wow. So this is in the last 2 weeks.
I am in Deaf Heaven.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was another snapshot of like a whole other part, you know, a whole other corner of this world that I was really fascinated by.
It is also odd, like, the plan is a wild one. If they're like, we're going to a major metropolitan area to find one mean lady who's part of a big team.
I think
two of them.
First of all, they seem to assume WLF is not
an army
that brolic. And I think this is what happens when teenagers call the shots. Is like they get
there we go.
A little puffed up. And they're like, we got this. All we need is like one rifle. It's like about to run into quite a defense.
Do you think kids who have survived the mushroom apocalypse have the same water bottle dependency that my kids and contemporary kids have?
Seth's like, here, have some hardtack.
I know. It's like, really?
Yeah, and some chlorine tablets.
You guys seem to have all the creature comforts of home. You can't like slip a Pop-Tart in there? Hardtack. Wow.
Yeah, and then that brings me to my last question is, who would you have been in the council meeting?
Oh, thank you for asking. I actually took a screenshot. There was, I don't know if you noticed, how many people are on the council? 14?
8.
Something like that? No, it's big.
Oh, they lose 8-3,
They lose
right?
the votes, but anyway, it's over 10.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting developments of this podcast as we enter year 14 is that we can no longer count. We're just, no one will ever know how many episodes were in White Lotus season 3. There's no way to ever possibly ascertain how many people are on the council. Who cares? I don't know if you noticed, but I believe he's sitting just to if you're facing the council, as we would be as just members of the society, just to the right of Jesse, there is a guy who kind of looks like the Verizon guy.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe he shops, on Larchmont.
Uh-huh.
And his whole shit is, that's a little concerning. That's his whole entire shit. I'm sure he's just like,
that would be you.
He's a Canadian extra, or maybe he's an actor and you got to, and they were like, don't speak, because then we have to pay you more or whatever. But that was entirely me. And I want to know everything about that guy's ability to be on the council.
Yeah.
Did you have to get elected? Did he glad hand, or was he just like, well, sure?
Did they have an influx of new faces because other council members were killed?
Oh, damn.
Obviously, Jesse is taking over. Like, he's showing that his physicality surpassed Tommy. He's able to hammer.
He was hammering.
Hammer foundation spikes.
Do you think that there's any element of nepotism? Like, were some of these the children of the fallen?
That's a good question.
Do you know what I mean?
It's like the Foster sisters are up there.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Or like, yeah, I think, or like when Menendez's wife tried to run for his Senate seat or whatever. Like, do you think it's kind of like that?
Did she do that?
Sure. No, she didn't. The governor's wife tried to run, and your guy Andy Kim was like, I don't think so.
Okay, my
her out.
I'm not really that up on New Jersey politics.
This is a win for you, considering we were talking about your opinion on campus activism a moment ago. I'm trying to just muddy the picture, because part of the legend, right, is no one really knows what's in the portfolio we're all dragging you for. No one knows exactly where you land on the spectrum.
I'll golf with anyone.
You will golf like Saquon Barkley in so many ways. You've lived in New York, you've lived in Philadelphia, and you'll golf with anyone. That was anyway. All that to say is that's my guy, and I was staring at him the entire time.
I really enjoyed the guy who was just like, I'm taking this opportunity to talk about my favorite crops.
Yes,
that was a very funny bit. I think
that reminded me of Parks and Rec council meetings. I like that.
It would have been interesting if they had tried to double down on the disorientation, on pushing viewers after such a difficult previous episode. I was going back and looking at how did other great shows follow up great episodes? I think it varies from show to show. After Connor's wedding it's the kind of Logan's Wake episode of Succession, for instance. So there's a lot of like different ways of handling it. I went back and looked at that episode of Succession, and I was show's fucking incredible.
Which Logan's wedding?
Yeah, the one after.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, the one after where Kendall kind of screws over Fisher Stevens, and
it's all in the townhouse, right?
Yeah. That's like I guess that's all I have on Last of Us. I mean, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I think as we continue to watch the show, which we will continue to do, I think that there is just
he said,
I'm just putting it out there to the universe. Maybe something else will come up. Do have jury duty coming up, so maybe that'll just take me off the board for
Your
a year.
Your excitement at jury duty has been noted by me.
Just when it was happening on Monday mornings and maybe Thursday mornings. Otherwise, I think that this show is fascinating, and for many reasons, but one of which is everything that we bring up, and you're comparing it, in ways favorably or slightly unfavorably to Succession, or all the things that it has to do, or the fact that it even has a character like Gale, I continue to feel like this show is the best case version of something that might otherwise just be too challenging to do. Again, I want to be very careful saying that, because that is what 80% of screenwriting is these days, right? Not just the Trojan horsing, but doing the best possible version of what it is that is getting made, and trying to, So I do want to give everyone credit for the casting, for the production design, for the time and real estate that it gives to the emotional things. It's the best case version of it, maybe, an episode like this. It couldn't do, because they have to get to Seattle, because we have to kill Abby, because we have to keep moving on and having zombie fights.
Abby?
Or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's what their mission is. I'm not saying that the show has to be.
Oh, yeah, right.
I'm saying we couldn't have the episode after Connor's wedding episode.
No.
It couldn't be that.
I guess so.
So I also would want that, but we can't do it. So how do we feel about what we had? And for me, it was more on the negative side of the ledger, just as an episode of TV, because it was so many different things stitched together.
I thought it was interesting, not to belabor my point, but when I was thinking about, there is another version of this show that's like literally the day after. Ellie is not in this episode, and it's about Jesse kind of stepping up to be like, here's how we rebuild. Here's like all the things that need to get done.
Here are all the things that need to be hammered.
Yeah. Here are all this, and guess what? I can hammer.
I can do it.
Okay, why don't we chat a little bit about Well, the studio, here's what I have to say about the studio. It's incredibly funny. And
great take.
This was the curbiest of episodes, I thought.
Yeah.
This most recent one.
This is the pediatric oncologist episode, premiered late last week.
Essentially, Matt, the Seth Rogen studio head character, being confronted with sort of the bubble that he exists in, where movies are the like end all be all of human existence, and other people outside of movies are often like, I haven't seen that. You know,
yeah.
And it's a funny thing because it's a very specific, I think, Los Angeles experience to be like, movies, what are you watching? Like, what have you seen it yet? Have you gone to this yet? Are you excited for one battle after another? And then people with like normal jobs are like, oh yeah, no.
Well, that's true for, I mean, I said this a few weeks ago, but that around the time that all three of us, you, me, and Kaya, we put our top 10s up, I was at a dinner where there were some young people and they were like, oh, asking about what we do. And they're like, oh, we did our top 10 list. And I showed it to one person who was sitting near me. And she was like, so cool. I haven't heard of any of these shows. Yeah. And I was like pointing at like The Bear or whatever. It was just like no ambient knowledge of any of the television programs that we spend months dissecting.
Did that person have scars on their face and a hammer in their hand?
I borrowed the hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can really take it out of you. Anyway, great guest turn from Rebecca Hall. I loved this episode, but I also loved the episode for what it's showing about this show, which is that they can do so many different styles of comedy as long as Seth Rogen has a gigantic fall. It's all fair.
I was going to ask you if you felt like they wanted to make a lot of this show.
When it's
because in the first episode, I was like, "This is cool." It feels like this is like a one and done, and that they're going to make this be very stakesy. And
I thought so too. Like it's going to be about
like, oh, they must have like notebooks filled with funny ideas for 30-minute episodes with this jagoff running around and like.
I genuinely can't tell, and I think we said this before, but like the season finale could answer all of this for us. It could be definitive.
And when that season finale happens in 37 episodes.
Exactly. I like
or one more. Who knows?
We have no idea, is what you're saying. I get it. Yeah. I thought you were wish casting.
No, I was
there's
just
4 more
joking
seasons.
about our inability to track the amount of episodes.
What about our inability to keep track of bits we're doing within a podcast?
Well, I think that's part of the charm. Or it's really the point when you turn it off and turn something else on.
That's fine. Yeah, I think that I don't know. I feel like maybe the best case scenario here is that they are given the grace and space to do it a little bit like Curb. It's not improvised. There's a lot more prep that goes into it. It is extremely directed by Evan and Seth. The oneers are just the oneers are spraying out like other things are spraying out in the early going of this episode, and but it seems like the kind of thing that they have. There's plenty of material. It seems like it is a very sturdy ship for a lot of different types of comedy. I would love to just have a steady diet of this show, but the demands on the like Seth Rogen likes to do a lot of different things. Is this the thing that he wants to spend 80% of his next few years doing?
That's a really good question. I mean, he's talked about how for him, Superbad was kind of everything he wanted to say with his 20s, and Pineapple Express was everything he wanted to say with his 30s, and that the studio is everything that he and Evan want to say about their 40s. So one would imagine...
Did he say that?
He did. I can't remember where, and he's done a great job talking about this show, but it may have been on Howard Stern. I can't remember. But I do think that I could see there being more to this. Yeah. I could see this. You could see a rise and fall and rise again of this character. He could lose his job. He could start doing something else. Like, there's a lot of different ways you could do this. So you could also tell me that this is going to be 10 episodes. I don't really feel like outside of Masters of the Air, Apple's in that business right now. I mean, there are...
Of one and dones?
Yeah. Like, there are series where I'm like, how are you going to keep doing them? They're going to keep making Presumed Innocent, right?
Yeah. The second season of Presumed Innocent. Yeah. Second season of Sugar. They're tossing the green lights around.
Well, I think that they think if we're going to invest in the show, it's got to be a library play, right? Like, it can't just be 5 episodes, 6 8 episodes of something.
Yeah, I think that's true. I hope there's more. I think it's pretty elite. It's really, really, really funny. Did you we were talking about earlier, this show took a pretty aggressive stance on golf. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, considering... No?
I have no comment.
You have no comment at this time?
I have no comment at this time. It's fine. I know he thinks golf is a boring sport, but
the most, quote, the most boring man he's ever met loves golf.
I will say that you meet all sorts of exciting people out on a golf course.
Guys who can really change your mind about things like immigration.
Or challenge you. Yeah.
Right, great. Really good.
Friends and neighbors.
Speaking of golf.
Yeah.
Started with golf as well.
This show, we talked about the last time we spoke about this show, we talked about its expanding landscape of characters, of plot lines. We got a new one this week where...
We sure did. Suddenly a new core cast member.
Yes.
I mean, she was in the previous week's episode, but now she steps to the fore.
Yes. And a real broadening, like, I think it's just getting broader and broader, and I was wondering if that was working for you.
Broad is right. Full disclosure, it is not working for me. This show at all at the moment. I think there are a number of places where it's starting to fall apart for me. The biggest one was this episode. This is the 4th episode, in which Nick thoughtlessly throws an extremely extravagant birthday party for Mel, for Amanda Pete's character.
I just think it was very thoughtful. I just think it wasn't exactly what she wanted.
So he was thinking only of himself.
No, I think that's his love language, is excess.
Was that his style of play on the court as well?
Yeah.
That resulted in all those champs. He's just like, I'll dunk twice on you.
I'm trying to figure out who he's supposed to be. Where did he win that title? I imagine
San Antonio, I believe.
Right. So, but maybe
so
he went
Bruce
to
Brown?
Yukon. Like, I'm trying to imagine like who he is and why he would be back in the East Coast like that.
Yes. I have a lot of questions about why he's doing any of the things that he does. But with that pedigree and resume. But that at the party, to fill an awkward silence, Coop's sister Ellie takes a guitar and begins singing a slowcore version of the Thompson Twins' Hold Me Now.
Yeah.
Well, all of the incredibly rich dickheads in the audience start swaying and being like, this is awesome. And I was like, okay. That was the cringiest moment of television of the year for me. And it was presented with such earnestness that this is working, that this is like effective, this is emotional, this is making me feel things for people who I do not feel things for yet. That was indicative of my relationship thus far to this show's...
Not to go back on this again, that is exactly... Asking you to feel things for people you feel nothing for yet is the perfect way of putting some of the challenges that Last of Us has.
Yeah. Yes. So, Kaya, can we edit that observation and put it in about the other show so I sound smarter?
Actually, just make that the opening statement of the podcast.
Couldn't you just, Kaya, could you just chop up everything I've said thus far about Chris, about golf, and just make a better show out of it? That's cool. I mean, there are other places to go here, you know? Like, I think broadly, you were saying this, or you mentioned that, like, this is the episode in which Elena, who's Nick's housekeeper, is revealed as the person who catches Coop in the act of...
And immediately goes into business with him.
And goes into business with him.
Amy Carrero is the actress.
I found this episode's, not its interest in the people who actually work for a living in this world and like work for these people to facilitate their luxurious lives. The interest in them, I think, is reasonable and necessary and
sincere.
Well,
I think it's sincere.
I don't want to. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't mean to question the sincerity. What I questioned though was the way that it was explained. The way like the voiceover again is just like, it turns out people from the Dominican Republic have families and opinions and lives, and they talk about us. I'm like, you know what I mean?
But isn't
there is a
you don't think that that's supposed to be a commentary on him?
I think the idea that this show is an incisive satire is doing a lot of heavy lifting right now. Because right now, I think it remains incredibly unopinionated. And I know that you pull a face when I say this. Maybe this is why you succeed in whatever foursome you draw on the golf course. Because people say stuff and you're like, I have no opinion about that.
I'm like, yes, comrade.
Or. Yeah, or. Who am I to speak on?
United Healthcare stock is doing great, Whatever you say.
I think we can all agree
that
violence in our streets is, well, can we agree? I think the show doesn't seem to want to take a side about these people and their lives of excessive consumption and sloth and disregard, and I'm not saying that the show should be against them necessarily. It should not necessarily be a socialist manifesto about the maids taking over. But if it is going to be about the integrity or the would-be integrity or the awakening of some integrity in this main character, I would like to see more of it. Instead of him just sort of floating through the world, reacting to people, having the same conversation with Barney for 4 straight weeks, having the same kind of interactions with his children for 4 straight weeks, and also then almost getting arrested. Like that's a pretty scary scenario. And he gets attacked by a dog, and then he's absolutely immaculate sipping whiskey at the party, a few scenes later, bringing his wife the candy that only he knows she wants.
Right.
Maybe the real criticism here, because I do believe that 4 episodes in, it's finding its footing, and that's fine, is that it is spread very, very thin, which I think is where you started the conversation.
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting example of what's the difference between traditional television writing, especially this last 10 to 12 years, Showtime-esque. We have to have 12 characters having each with a discrete plot line that then overlaps, but that is what eats innings, versus it's novelistic. I don't think that the show feels particularly novelistic, but I know that Jonathan Tropper has his roots in that.
Yeah, for sure.
But every time we go and spend time, admittedly, with a sort of charming back and forth between Barney and his wife, Grace, about her redesign of their house and how much it's costing him. It's time that we're not spending kind of at what's the core tension or story of this show. The show is now about a wide collection of characters living, spending, loving, cheating, whatever, in and around this Tony New York suburb, and also the people who work for them now. That's fine. I think it loses its momentum of I was on top of the world and now I'm at the bottom, and to scrape my way back up to the top, I'm going to have to use any means necessary, which is kind of like the central conflict for that main character.
He's not particularly sweaty. You know what I mean? Like the urgency of it, and it is perhaps unfair to compare shows across not just genres, but across eras. But because it is all a question of construction and what type of show you're attempting to make. And it is apples to oranges to a degree. But Walter White's predicament, we are with Walter White, right? And with each choice that he makes, and you feel the successive risk and anxiety of each step down a path. And maybe ultimately the show is about how for people like Coop, there are very rarely consequences. And so the consequences when they arrive will not only be biting, but be truly existentially shocking.
Yeah.
I'm open to that possibility. And I think that's worthwhile. But there is a flattening and diffusing element to this type of storytelling that takes us away from that urgency. When you mentioned the Barney and Grace scene, like Hoon Lee's my favorite actor on the show so far. I love the performance. I like the character.
New Space, funny, but she's good.
But that scene was kind of a TV throwaway. Where it's like, let's check in on these characters. And he's like, I'm brushing my teeth and you should spend less. And she's like, but here are my boobs. And he's like, awesome. And that's the scene.
Yep.
So what have we learned? We learned that he's pretty cavalier about dental health.
Yeah.
He throws the toothbrush, which I assume that means he's got a neck.
1,000 toothbrushes to replace it. Yeah.
Maybe, but then maybe he should look at his spending, because toothbrushes
How long
days,
have you been using the toothbrush you're currently using?
Thanks for asking. I swapped it out last week.
And how, would you say that's a rotation of every 6 weeks?
Every presidential administration, I revisit.
Wait, so when Biden won.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Did you change?
I didn't recognize that one, so it actually was quite an old toothbrush. Thank you for acknowledging my struggle.
I just did that for Kaya.
I know. At a certain point, I think they stopped recording 10 minutes ago, and now they're just letting us tire ourselves out. Yeah,
we're in agreement. Every episode has its charms, but it feels a little bit less like urgent and necessary than it did in the first episode.
And look, like, to use another Breaking Bad comparison, Skyler as a character was a challenge for the writers for the entire run of the series. They, I think, tried admirably, and I think that Anna Gunn did great work throughout the show. But I think even they would probably admit that the circumstance that they set up at the beginning, where this guy is sick AF and a criminal, and she's like, "Don't be bad," like that's a tough one, and they tried to figure that out.
They also walked right into the explosion of online conversation about television shows.
Totally.
So Skyler, as a character, took on a life of her own.
Yes, and I think the treatment yes, I completely
I'm sure Vince
agree.
Gilligan was like that's his wife. You know?
I bring it up not to criticize him again, because I think they, in good faith, were like, oh, okay, well, what are some other things we could be doing here? What could it look like? But at a certain point, you're saddled with the dynamic that you've created in the beginning, and playing that to its. I mean, that's why Carmela Soprano was not that, you know, and it's not necessarily a question of like one is a better performer or not. It's like the way the show was scaffolded, like allowed her to have more fluidity and more power and whatever. All of that is to say, you and I love Amanda Peet, and as a performer, and the fact that her plot in the last two episodes, her plot in the first episode, it's a pilot. Okay, she's reacting to Coop. Second episode, we learn she has a job. Great. She has a job. They chose for her job to be therapist, so that might be a way into character or observation. Her plot in episode 3 was there are moths in the closet. Yep. And her plot in this episode is my boyfriend threw me a big party and it makes me sad. I need a little more meat on the bone. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we're going to be making this a large ensemble piece, I would like some more. And maybe there's, again, this is the 4th episode, but these are some
red flags.
A lot
concerns.
A lot of Ellie, too.
A lot of Ellie. Let's wrap up there. I think we did a great job. So what we're going to do on Thursday is talk about the next 3, so episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor, which are coming out on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I am excited to have this conversation with you. We can also chat about some other stuff if you would like. We have next week, Gemstone's finale is coming on Sunday. I suppose the rehearsal is out there for us to discuss at some point. I've been waiting for like the rehearsal to kind of like have a couple to talk about. Maybe there's a few
Gemstones.
Things. That's what I said.
Oh, you did say it.
Yeah.
I was just checking what else was coming up. I wasn't listening at that point.
Okay.
Can we edit that part?
No, not at all. I think it's important for people to see you as you really are.
The truth is I was just wondering, like, if you hit the links with Orson Krennic, like, do you think...
I think he would be very entertaining.
See, this is what I like about you.
With 2 beers on the front 9. And then when we get to the back 9 and he's had his 4th IPA, I think it gets a little dicey.
And he starts saying what he really thinks about Gorman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is he like the first beer? He's just like, of course, a beautiful society.
But if he comes up to me and talks to me the way he talked to Dedra, and he's just like, you've been so quiet out there. Tell me what you think. And it's like, but instead it's like, I know there's a great golfer inside of you. Why don't you show him to me? Then that would be inspirational. You know?
It's like, what they don't tell you on the news is that he's funny, right? Like, everyone's like, oh, these big bad empire guys.
I want to just make it clear before we go that I would not golf with Trump.
You draw the line?
I would not golf with Trump. We're all having fun here. I don't want anybody
You
to
wouldn't
think...
golf with Trump because you respect the office too much and you think he has too much to do, too much on his plate right now with the great work? What do you...
That is a great question. It's like, why is he golfing with Saquon? It's like, there's so much fucking shit happening.
No, because you saw his tweet about, or his Truth Social, you always report to me what's on that, about Shadur Sanders, right? And he's basically just like,
I saw this
he's
and
a
I was just like,
but he's a WFAN caller. Like,
Yeah.
that's all he wants to be. And if Nathan Fielder could just create a rehearsal where he just gets to have opinions about dumb shit, maybe we would have saved ourselves all this trouble.
He just wanted to be like, Taco Bell, the menu's gotten too expensive for the quality. I hate it. You know, that's what he wants to do.
Yes.
Be a takesman.
Yes. And you, unfortunately, you've burned all your good takes already, you said, but you're willing to take one for the team by hitting, where would you go with him? Riviera? What would you?
Probably one of his places. I'm never going to go to one of his places. I don't know. I hate this conversation.
This is the best thing, because we're done, but the whole construction of this conversation is that you're amenable and you're a good guy and maybe you could go golfing with monsters.
Uh-huh.
We're also seeing that you're continuing to talk to me, even though I'm the monster now.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Thursday.